all the builders kind of died out. In the meantime, I kept building probably around 70 people from 20, 21 different layer 2s on Ethereum, brought together, many of them from Asia, from the West.
And do you think that their role is more important going forwards, or is it the role changing that they play for Ethereum?
When you say scaling Ethereum, I think in his pure way, it means that you take all the values of Ethereum, all the properties of security, decentralization, and make sure that whoever uses EL2 gets all of this. Ethereum becomes that source of truth, that layer for all the machines, all the systems to establish what truly they're working on. And the Ethereum is scaling itself on the layer 1. The researchers have been working for many years on preparation of everything related to accounts to post-quantum security. The foundation, leadership, and coordination should always focus on things that don't happen naturally in the market.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Jay Zabak, and I'm very, very lucky to have Tomasz, one of the co-executives of the Ethereum Foundation, here with me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
And as usual, we're not going to assume that you're aware of who Tomasz is, despite his important work. So, Tomasz, I'd love to just sort of start back at the beginning of you. I guess what was the first, material thing that you think set you out on this journey to end up at the EF?
Yeah, I think that's when I was thinking about my career at the time when I was at university and so on, I always was thinking about computer science, about programming, I would read a lot of things related to, I don't know, like this, society things, philosophy, story of how the things were built for civilizations, but I always thought it was more of a hobby. And it means that my path was strictly focusing on becoming a developer, becoming an engineer, and sooner or later, I would probably end up closer to finance, and I did. After a few years of working on projects related to enterprise building, like ERP systems, I joined Citibank, and so that was in London. So I moved to London from Poland, where I studied, where I grew up. And in London, you start working for a bank, and suddenly you plunge into this lots of conversations about finance, about real estate, about the big world. You start tracking the world events and realizing that actually someone trades them, and you can observe it first person. I was spending time around people at the front office in the banks, and it was exciting. And at the same time, because I was at the FX department, I thought, well, I'm hearing about Bitcoin. Maybe I'll go and visit a meetup in London to learn more about Bitcoin.
What year was this?
Quite late. It was 2015 or so. And I went to that meetup in Shoreditch. Was maybe like 5 to 10 people sitting, and there was one guy there who had a computer talking something about Ethereum and installing, I think, the test DevNet version, early version of Ethereum DevNet. So 2015, it would be probably like a Olympic or so testnet. And so I went to learn about Bitcoin. I learned about Ethereum. I came back. I started reading about it. I tried to install the early version of GAF. It didn't work. I left it, and I mentioned that to a colleague at the bank. And even and the other guy that was at the bank who never talked to anyone almost. He was always focused on coding, and every day at 5 p.m. he would leave the office and just come back to code as a contractor. And when he heard me talking about blockchain, he said, "Oh, we've heard about Bitcoin." And then it's like the same day, by talking to him briefly, I learned for the first time the HODL word, and I realized that was this silent, quiet hodler. And that's how I slowly started discovering the world, but of crypto. And I started reading a lot about it. And then the next 1 or 2 years, it was both some career changes, but mostly in finance. So I moved to a hedge fund, but at the same time, learning more about Ethereum, becoming more excited, and deciding that, oh, wow, maybe now is the time to start a company, which I kind of never planned. I was interested in, I was reading it, but I always thought it was not my world, not my life, not my destiny, to not only this, I didn't think that I would have a destiny of traveling. I considered myself more like a stay-at-home, play computer games guy. Don't do risky things. I love my corporate job.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm nomadic and building on Ethereum. So that was the beginning. I started Nethermind, a company, and practically with some vision, some ideas that I wanted to explore. It was more like start a company first, be excited that now you have your own company, only then starting to clarify what it would be. So it took me like maybe 1 or 2 months before I wrote down what I expect the future would be of blockchain. So this is 2017, and I thought at that time I was reading a book, Hedge Fund Wizards, and there were some. It's like a series of interviews with the people started some of the greatest hedge funds, like some of the greatest traders, starting out 50s all the way to the 80s. And you hear their stories of how they were realizing at the beginning that you could trade from the news on TV, and over time you would start using much more sophisticated tools, the risk management and so on. But you realize that massive world of hedge funds and big money started with some people trying to invent the new ways of doing things and only building tooling for themselves. So I thought nowadays the world is faster, so maybe within a few years we start seeing big money, big institutions, and everyone adopting a blockchain, but also needing tools for blockchain. And I thought, wow, I'm coming from enterprise with experience in the tooling that is needed for large systems, complex systems, and big architectures for managed market data. So I could use it, and I could just start solo building tooling for people to use in the future to use blockchain.
Yep.
And since it was 2017, soon after I started building, there was like massive collapse of the market, and 2 or 3 years of the crypto winter, which means that everyone else started losing belief, and I had some stash to simply focus and build. And I had one person joining me in the beginning, Grzegorz Sienkiewicz. And by that time, I've never seen him in person. I only met like 3 years later, or he was helping me to build it at the beginning.
Yep.
And slowly, I started learning how Ethereum works, because I wanted to build the tooling, but I decided to build Ethereum client. So the node software of Ethereum, which means that you have to understand every single aspect of how the network operates,
Yep.
how Ethereum works. Yeah, so that's the long story. And then the company, at some point, 2020, there was more COVID, and people went back homes. They didn't know what to do. They started playing computer games, gambling, lots of things were happening. And I think that was also driving the remote payments, remote jobs, more of the interest in coins. And suddenly blockchain became popular again. The money started flowing in, investors, everyone wanted to build, but all the builders kind of died out in the meantime. And I kept building, and I was on the edge of failing. And everything started going well. The company grew to around 300 people at some point. And we started building a lot of solutions related to infrastructure, security, DeFi, and continue building the nodes. So nowadays, the Nethermind nodes that I started at the time in the beginning is one of the major infrastructure pieces of Ethereum network globally. So I think around between 20 and 30% global nodes are running that code base.
Because originally when you started, right, there was just Geth, right? And then you were
No, there were already a few clients, but some of them were like giving up already, and then some other appeared later. So it was always a few. I think when I was starting, there was Harmony, there was Geth, there was F0, there was Trinity in Python. So I was not even too aware that things are missing. I wanted to build it initially just more like for myself to understand it, and then starting to build products. So yeah, nowadays, because of that focus on like stability, thinking of enterprises, thinking of it as a product, which is not typical for crypto people that wanted to like reject very often that world of enterprise, and people that actually would think of the software to be reliable in the production environments, right? It should be secure, safe for sure,
Yep.
but reliability and making sure that you don't have to have some engineers looking at it all the time, that was not the case. So yeah, that's the story. It grew into a company that was lots of fantastic people that we worked with. In the meantime, because we built the internship program, that it was famously one of the first places in the Ethereum space where you could have people without any experience coming and working with us for 3 months, paid some minimum payment, but relevant for many people because it was global. And I think nowadays it would be almost like 1,000 people that went through this 3 months internship program at Denmark.
There's always been a shortage of like good engineers, basically, that like can code in the languages that matter, right?
And the time, yes, we wanted to bring the talent, and it was a bit of waves. When crypto was becoming popular, then you would have CVs from the top universities in the world. Everyone wanted to build DeFi, and everybody wanted to solve complex mathematical problems. And for many engineers, it was very refreshing because at the university you would learn all the like algorithms and solutions and like hard problems, and then you would go to the jobs where you would do boring things.
Mm-hmm.
But in blockchain crypto, there was a approach to really explore core things, and the type of problems that people were solving kept them going. So many engineers loved it, and it was always attracting lots of talent. So that was fun. We worked with so many so fantastic people.
And then again, so like it was sort of like again 2016, 2017, right, when you were starting to work
Yeah.
on Nevermind, right? Like, what did you think Ethereum was when you first came across it, right? Like, why did you start interacting with it? Like, what did you think it was and what it was going to become? Like, why did you decide, I guess, like to start building out this infrastructure for Ethereum?
Um, I don't think much changed. When you read the early papers, like white paper from Vitalik, the first documents about what Ethereum would be, they're consistent with what Ethereum is nowadays. I keep this like one page of like notebook text file that says we're going to build a node software. We're going to build market data for hedge funds that will be running their own nodes. So I imagine that the finance of the world will run on Ethereum. I imagine that at that time I was thinking of examples of tokenization of autonomous robotaxis. So I thought embodied AI would run on Ethereum. And I still think that this is what's happening now, and Ethereum is the layer for
Mm-hmm.
generally global automation. I was comparing it to Factorio, if you know the computer game, where it's like just automating everything. And then you realize that we could build the entire world like this. And if we build the world like this, then Ethereum becomes that source of truth, that layer for all the machines, all the systems to establish what really they're working on. So that was on my imagination at that time. And it's what it is now. Did I know exactly the path to that point? Probably less. I didn't expect maybe that crypto winter to be so challenging, so demanding. I didn't have this imagination of the pain of the founder. I thought it would be 5 years going upwards only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was really tough. It was story of
So what was the, I guess, so like what was the head count of Nevermind at the hardest point, I guess, like, where you were most concerned about the future in the depths of that winter before there could
so I think it must have been probably around 5 or 6 people.
so
But
one
no,
person is enough, right?
yeah, it was bootstrap business,
Yeah.
so we didn't have practically any funding. We had some grants, and at some point, when you hire any people as a business, then suddenly you realize how expensive it is.
Yeah.
And you have to pay people every month, and I know at some point you just like sell everything of the like pension funds money and everything, all the savings that you had. If you had some crypto stashed, and then you sell it just to save the business.
Yeah.
That's what happens to me. So
Yeah.
um, I- I'm joking that every founder has this story that they got like miraculously survived just about the time when they're about to die. So I think it's just because the founders are so perseverant that they're dying for years. No, so but they're like always are about to die. About this was my case. I had a story when I was walking to discuss with a guy whether he would help me in the project. I went to a pub and somehow my card has just like lost $3 and I started like pounds. It was in London. And I was thinking of how to manage that. That I'll buy him a beer, but buy myself like half a pint, so I don't use it. It was not that bad. I'm like,
No,
it's
it's,
fine.
yeah, still, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there were moments when I was crazy.
But again, you stayed strong, right? I mean, you stayed committed and you got through that period, and then the light sort of like came,
Yeah.
and then you were positioned well, I guess, and you were able to, I guess, like, to keep building out their demand along, side the turning of the market. How was that? And I guess like talk a little bit more, I guess, about your, I guess, like then like the transition to the Ethereum Foundation itself.
Sure. So last year there was a period of the like challenging times for Ethereum ecosystem. There's lots of questions, lots of complaints about the way the things would be done. And uh, I guess 1 year, so much happened towards it since then. And at that time, the board was looking for people to bring as a new executive directors, well, like it's co-executives. So me and Shelway at that time, I didn't know it. And they reached out, and why they reached out, probably you have an interesting combination of experience with me in the Ethereum space. On one side, I was coming from with history of working for banks and institutions. On the other side, I kind of rejected it to solo build the client, the core infrastructures. I understood technically every bit of Ethereum. I worked with Starknet and other layer twos from Nethermind, so I understood the challenges and motivations and aspirations of layer twos. I worked on Flashblocks and many infrastructure projects related to Ethereum. And by that time, I already was a nomadic, and I was traveling around the world and speaking in many events and talking about various aspects of Ethereum. And very often, this would be things that really were the hot topics. Again, it happened to be that I was working on many projects that were working on the cool things. And on top of it, I also started talking more and more about the future of AI, of the challenges of AI, and the opportunities. So maybe it was a good combination. The challenges were probably like all the potential conflicts that you would have to manage running the company that was an infrastructure builder. At that time, I started setting up the Lantern Capital as a fund with Gokhan. So we just like I agree. We've been talking about it for a year before that, and then 1 week before they reached out to me from the foundation. Gokhan said, I decided now. I resigned from my job. Now it's like it's done." And then 1 week later, yeah, was asking if I would like to join as executive director. So we had lots of conversations, and we agreed that like with some limitations that the fund will be Ethereum oriented, that we could continue. And so that time I joined, and I started focusing on thinking on this a bit of like change management. The organization that needs a bit of a nudge towards the urgency, towards a bit more transparency, a good communication internally, being much more open to communication as like podcasts, answering tough questions.
Yeah.
And those were the main changes. And then thinking about the strategies across the board of ecosystem development and protocol, and what is important, what has to be, how to respond immediately when people feel that something is at risk. You have to start calming them down. And we have this example from a few weeks ago with post-quantum security. Ethereum has been working, the researchers have been working for many years on preparation of everything related to accounts to post-quantum security. And it became a scare for the banks just recently. Like particularly at the Davos forum, some banks started saying, "Oh, quantum is coming much faster than we expected. We have to update our systems. The banking systems are not ready. The cryptography is not ready." But then they started asking questions about Bitcoin, about Ethereum. So we knew that we had a lot of work, but we also knew that we have to immediately publish a lot of information about what we've been doing and how ready we are. We have the roadmaps that we agreed on, the roadmaps that we know how to do that exactly. So this kind of urgency in communication, because if you leave it for 1 or 2 weeks, then people will say, "Oh, like you're not prepared."
Yep.
nobody will know that you've done this like 3-4 years. So you were a happy way for researchers.
Yeah.
And this all changes, but gradually I helped a lot. We established the AI team, the centralized AI, many other changes. So I wouldn't list them here, but that was the story of working with the organization that um, has to help to coordinate many of the aspects of Ethereum.
No, amazing. And maybe that brings us like to today. So you're here at Network School, and I guess like why? Why are you here, and who are you here with, and why are they all here? What's going on?
Sure. Last year, I visited Network School for one day. At the time, I was at Token 2049. It's a large conference, blockchain conference in Singapore. And since Network School is just like 1 hour drive away by taxi, and I think I met Gordon at Token 2049. He said, so come and join, visit us at Network School. And I said, all right, and then arranged a visited for one day, and I think Balaji was passing by, and I stopped for a moment. I said hello, like he's a great host, and I said, oh, like we should organize some events, Ethereum events at Network School. I said, oh, it would be nice to bring all the L2s. I just said L2 Fab 2, and I said, all right, and that was like 2-3 minutes conversation, but we had the seed of the event to organize. And we organized the event here. I think it's probably around 70 people from various L2s, 21 different layer 2s on Ethereum brought together, many of them from Asia, from the West. We wanted to uh, make them meet in a place where they will very often meet for the first time.
So is this the biggest gathering there's been?
The like engineers and researchers, not for the L2s, probably not, but it's an important one at the time when there was lots of questions about interoperability, about the relationship between L1 and L2, and also in the past, I think it would be either people would meet in Asia and talk about applications very often, or about infrastructure in Europe, in the West, like this where historically majority of infrastructure engineers, core developers would be for Ethereum. So I wanted to bring them together, build the bridges, and send like perfect location. So that's why we're here as a 1 week event. It's going very well, very great spirits. But also it's the time when there's lots happening really in the blockchain space, in the world economy in general. I think and the world is shaking.
There's a lot going on. Are there any like key messages that like you guys are agreeing on here this week, or like that you're trying to drive from sort of like EF's perspective?
So we didn't want it to be too much EF driven. So every day we have 1 or 2 sessions, of which many are EF talking about the roadmap, about some aspects of L2's collaboration require coordination. But also we give the discussion group space, so people vote on what they would like to discuss. And we split into multiple groups, and other people pick up various topics that are relevant, and it's really much of it is also to simply build bridges between people, so they have more opportunities to reach out, to talk throughout the
And do you think that their role is more important going forwards, or is it the role changing that they play for Ethereum?
role of the Ethereum Foundation.
Of the L2 of the L2s.
Oh, the L2s. Oh, we just in a week that as we gathered, we had this tweet from Vitalik that talks about the future of Ethereum, and Vitalik says that, look, we had this roadmap of idea of scaling Ethereum through the L2s, but there are stages of decentralization that are being tracked by the website l2beat.com. A fantastic team that does a lot of auditing work on analyzing the behavior, like the design architecture of L2s. So this will be some technical details, but generally, like Vitalik mentioned, that we don't see the realization of that vision that L2s follow strictly the pure requirements for carrying all the values, all the properties of Ethereum, all the way to layer 2 and scale for this way. And then because of that, asked question or maybe like stated that this is not really scaling Ethereum. When you say scaling Ethereum, I think in his pure way, that means that you take all the values of Ethereum, all the properties of security, decentralization, and make sure that whoever uses the L2 gets all of this. However, many of the L2s, or even like overwhelming majority of them, went in the direction of taking some trade-offs. So picking their strengths of distribution, novel VM mechanisms, ZKVM, other aspects of wherever they could think they innovating, but not necessarily carrying all those requirements because they were very limiting. And then Vitalik said, so the real scaling, the pure scaling for Ethereum will happen in a different way for the most likely for the native rollups on Ethereum, and Ethereum is scaling itself on the layer one. While the rollups will have to find the differentiation models, and I think maybe Vitai doesn't talk about it much, but many L2s understood it and decided for this path for a long time, and they picked that differentiation route. They picked the conversations with enterprises, and when you talk to financial institutions, they understand the concepts of risk, right? So they understand what kind of risks they're removing, they hedging, what type of risks they take. And I think that when you have L2s, they allow you to remove some counterparty risks. They remove some technology risks. Many of them thanks to that anchoring in Ethereum. So like Ethereum being the lowest risk chain, and Ethereum L2s kind of carrying much of those protection mechanisms, but taking some trade-offs to scale or to provide better user experience. But the institutions who choose it are capable of analyzing it, and then there's lots of help. But if you really want to scale that pure Ethereum version, Damatai says we have to have our own way, and we cannot rely on the L2s that direction, because it says that those trade-offs are more natural to appear, while the foundation leadership and coordination should always focus on things that don't happen naturally in the market, like coordinating that collaboration of people that care about cypherpunk values and about security and privacy and censorship resistance. And that doesn't come automatically with the VC money, with the for-profit projects. So they'll have to coordinate people that normally go alone and don't like to build with others because they focus more on freedom.
Yeah, no, it's very, very interesting. It's like Arc is, I think like Pelagian Network State and Arc, we sort of like see us as sort of like a layer two here on the layer one, right? We're taking the analogies and bringing them into the physical world, and so again, that we sort of like don't want to compete directly with Network School here, right? There's no point. All we want to do is be complementary and cooperative with the underlying network. And if we're not adding some value back to the network, then all we're doing is being sort of like, what's the word? Like extractive, right? So it's like here again, we specialize and we here focus on building a product which serves like a subsection of the community in a more developed way than kind of like others. But it's yeah, there's all these other L2s that are popping up here now as well, and like maybe some of the L2s from the from Ethereum are going to come and
Sure.
pop up here as well.
Like farming.
I think like Base is, I don't know if we're breaking news, but I think maybe we're in a room that they're taking. It's interesting how these words are sort of like worlds are sort of like combining. I guess Arc as well has had one foot in the sort of world of Ethereum from the beginning. The first things we did were run some pop-ups in the sort of Zuzalu ecosystem. How much have you interacted, I guess, with things outside of Network School, right? So you've obviously been engaging here and you brought everyone here, but there's this whole kind of like Zuzalu movement, which is, Network School is very Ethereum aligned still, but it's like so almost like non-partisan, right? Whereas like Zuzalu is a lot more sort of like Ethereum aligned. Like, have you had some involvement in that? What are your thoughts of that sort of like movement?
Yeah. I've had experience with that. So the last 4 years for me as being digital nomad, and I didn't participate in the first Zalo in Montenegro, but it kind of forked into multiple different pop-up cities ideas, and I think there's still some work for all of us to think of some kind of consistent naming, really depending whether you're staying for a month, for a year, or like it's 10 people or 100 people. And then I joined some of them. I think I joined Edge City in Chiang Mai. I was with Invisible Garden. I was with Shanghai Wool, but sometimes as a visitor, sometimes as a resident, a bit on the edge of it. I was at a visit here at network school, and another thing that's amazing way of something that's super important for the network like Ethereum, of avoiding becoming strictly technical engineers oriented thing or founders oriented, that you start bringing aspects of culture, of art, of like like the longevity, well-being, and
Yep.
spirituality, and then it becomes community that becomes more natural, and you have that aspect of engineers learning what's there in the real world, what kind of problems to solve, and how people like those problems to be solved for them, so the life doesn't feel boring and gray and so
Hmm.
on.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think it's extremely important. It's an opportunity to break thought leaders and allow people to find mentors, allow people to understand also different cultures
Yeah.
uh, in great spaces, and I enjoyed a lot. Zoo Berlin, Zoo Garden. This were some amazing events as well. That were very much like mixing some aspects of well-being, spirituality, and also very strong infrastructure Ethereum conversations. So you would have discussions about block sequencing, which is very heavy engineering topic. Um, and it's a bit of like yoga places
Yep.
with everyone laying on the floor and enjoying the time.
Yeah.
So it makes you think differently and solve the problems maybe in more creative ways.
That's interesting, right? 'Cause I think a lot of the leaders of these pop-ups will end up watching this, right? And so if you did have a message to people like me or Balaji or these other kind of like leaders, like what are the things that we can do that are most useful, you think, for EF, for Ethereum, for the wider community? What could we do?
Um, no, it's avoiding efficiency trap, like when you try to optimize for particular results, and practically when you're inviting people, the moment you invite them to co-create, and then try to place them exactly into particular roles, which here at Network School, it feels like there's lots of space for people to explore and co-build the space, and then start, as you say, like the layer twos and see some ideas, startups. So that creativity and freedom is where you do some filtering, but when you let people in, you start trusting them and say, you're building the space and you surprise me, and you're not just fully focused on my goals and number, but you actually tell me what my goals should be. I think I believe that when you build companies, it's the same. You invite the best people, but then you let them co-create the business. You let them co-create, like co-define a direction where you want to go, and you're surprised by where you pushed, instead of just like focusing on style leadership. I just tell everyone that's where you go.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and I can't say too much on sort of canvas, but it's like we are actually being here and we're in the business of co-creating network school itself, right? Whenever an arc experience is happening, we just focus on being a foundation that everyone leverages for their own sort of like purposes, right? And we don't want to dictate that exact experience too much. Like what's interesting, we are becoming co-owners, right? Like, NS is issuing points, right? Like, like we're becoming co-owners. And I guess it's like the same sort of incentive structures or things that bound, these protocols together that have allowed them to become the things they have are sort of now manifesting in the real world. And we're starting to not just co-create, but sort of like co-own these physical spaces and physical networks. And it's just like, it's a very interesting time. So I hope we're doing more of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's a like long-term permanent space, so it's a different experience for people here than in my nomadic experience, where I would visit those spaces for 2 or 3 weeks, and obviously when you start living in a place, there's different setup, different challenges, and I think it would be inspiring to be in a place like this for a year and understand. On one side, you see people coming and going, but also you see that the vision becoming true, and just looking at a story, like the journey of Balaji's vision into reality, into something that's really meaningful, and create probably lots of super successful stories that people be coming back with their memories to this days, and say people that I've met, the
Yeah.
changes that
Yeah.
happened in me.
No, I think people come here and they get outcomes. I think that's one of the really interesting things about the product now here. people come, and I think like there's a diversity of outcomes that they can get, right? I mean, you talked about the internships that you put on, teaching people to be able to work in the world of crypto. Here, they're teaching people to code or to market or to create content. There's all of this stuff, and people are coming and leaving with actual skills, or they're coming and they're going to burn every day, and they're actually like, but like just like I don't know what percentage, but like at least a quarter or half the people come in and have like a material health difference like within a month. It's kind of crazy, but
I don't tell you that, but like I spent the last 3 days going to this morning burns, and I expected some very relaxing yoga, but absolutely destroyed.
But it's good because you do it together, right? Like I can't work out alone anymore. I need everyone around me to bother doing it, right? Otherwise, so I really like that.
And I walk around and you see all these ripped people, like scissor, like big down.
People,
Tell you.
honestly, like you prove it's not that just turn up and you will end up ripped, right? It's not actually that hard. They make it easy. It is hard. They make it easy. But so then maybe final question then, maybe just like to look to the future a little bit more, right? And I think like specifically with you and your role at EF, I guess like 2026. We're 2026 now. Okay, yeah, 2026, right?
So it's
2026 and beyond. I guess like how do you see? What are you hoping? What's your vision? I guess for the next few years for Ethereum.
for Ethereum.
Or for yourself,
think
or,
for Ethereum, I think it becomes there's a layer for lots of interactions that start transitioning from strictly human to hybrid human plus AI, and to automating more and more of our lives. That feels like a natural layer for lots of, call it agentic or AI interactions. So that massive automation movement. This is a great opportunity for lots of new builders to once again have this glimpse of crazy experimentation. Like last week or two, we've seen a lot of OpenClaw experimentation.
Yep.
The agentic AI. And people start deploying the agents on Ethereum, and they would start talking to each other. And it's like a lot of it's on one side it's useless, but also that's how many of the things on Ethereum started 2015, 16, 17. The projects sometimes would feel useless. Even nowadays they feel useless, but that's how founders experiment. And that's how $1 billion projects and impactful projects, the ones that really change, like the stable coins now connecting people and like many African countries, like you have stable coins used for merchant payments, and generally stable coins for the cross-border payments. There's a massive difference, and that came from those experimentation moments. And this is happening now as well. I think we'll automate the entire world through the experiments that seem stupid, seem crazy, but that's how we start. We play. I think that's playing, building toys, and having joy of experimentation always leads to the real innovations.
I think you should just move in here, right? Like we're doing this all the time, like
Only I could live in all the places that I visit.
yeah, you have to keep on. You've got a lot of people that you need to deal with. Tomasz, thank you so much for being here,
Thank you.
give the time. I think that's like super useful. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers. Pleasure.
Pleasure.
You think aging is curable?
It's not a matter of thinking, it's obviously curable.
You as a sort of an artificial intelligence researcher decided to declare a war on aging. Could you just like define aging for people?
So I'd say that aging is the combination of two processes. There's a process that goes on throughout life, and then there's a process that happens later in life. Cars are not built to last 100 years, but there are still some cars around that were built 100 years ago. I was thinking, well, okay, the body's a machine. It's a really, really complicated machine, but it's still a machine. That has got to be the single most fucked up reason to take my biology serious. A very small minority of scientists are explicit that their goal in life is to win a Nobel Prize. How come you can get any life extension just by fixing one type of damage in a mouse? The answer is because the body is so clever.